Today we examine the case of a man, his pregnant fiancée, and a secret that festered beneath promises of forever. To their friends, they seemed ready to start a family, she glowing with excitement, and he quietly supportive, if not overly enthusiastic. But behind closed doors, conversations took a darker turn. He didn't want the babies. She refused to give them up. And when she went missing just days after a tense argument, the community hoped for the best. They didn't find her alive. Instead, they found her lifeless body buried near an abandoned sugar mill, her unborn twins still inside her. What followed would unravel a story of coercion, betrayal, and a kind of silence that justice couldn't explain away. Before we dive deep into this case, make you subscribe to our channel and tell us where in the world you are watching from. It's always nice to meet you here. In the quiet town of Cedarvale, nestled in Jamaica's northern parish, 29-year-old Amara Bledsoe was known as the girl who always saw the bright side. A preschool teacher, newly engaged, newly pregnant, with twins, no less. Her life was meant to be beginning. But in the final weeks of her life, something changed. And when the man who once promised her a future became the prime suspect in ending her present, the town realized that love, when poisoned by control, can become deadly. Amara Bledsoe met Dorian Ellis in the most ordinary way, through a mutual friend at a birthday cookout in 2020. It was just before sunset, the air heavy with the scent of grilled meat and red-striped beer. Dorian was charming, polite, and attentive. He asked her about her teaching job, not just as a formality, but with interest. He even remembered her students' names the next time they spoke. That meant something to her. At the time, Amara wasn't dating anyone seriously. She was focused on work, on saving to buy a small car, and maybe someday a home. But Dorian entered her life like someone who had read the blueprint of her dreams. He was older by nearly 8 years, worked in logistics for a shipping company in Montego Bay, and claimed he was looking to settle down. He told her all the right things, how he respected independent women, how he admired her goals, and how he could see a future with her. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. Friends noticed how quickly things escalated. By the end of the year, Dorian had moved into Amara's 2-bedroom apartment in Cedarvale. At first, things appeared good. He helped pay bills, drove her to work when it rained, and even sat through the occasional Sunday service at her church, though he wasn't particularly religious. But not everything was as perfect as it seemed. For the next few weeks, Amara hoped he'd come around. She gave him space. She bought prenatal vitamins and started taking walks in the evening. When she went in for her first ultrasound, she invited him. He refused to come. But what broke her was what came next. At 10 weeks, Amara learned she was having twins. She was overwhelmed at first. Twins ran in her family, but she never expected it to happen to her. Still, she saw it as a blessing. 2 babies, double the joy. She called her mother crying with happiness. She posted a cryptic caption on Facebook, "When God gives you more than you asked for." But she didn't mention it to Dorian right away. She was scared of his reaction. When she finally told him, he didn't say a word. He got up from the couch, grabbed his car keys, and drove away. He didn't return until the next morning. No explanation. No apology. That week, Amara began confiding in her coworker, Miss Eliza, an older teacher who had become something of a mentor to her. According to Miss Eliza, Amara was worried. Dorian had started suggesting that she take care of it, that she wasn't ready to raise 1 child, much less 2. He brought up money, his job, her career. He told her that having babies now would ruin everything. At one point, he even handed her a card from a private clinic in Kingston. But Amara had made up her mind. She wanted to keep the pregnancy. She told him she would raise them without him if necessary. That she didn't need him to play the role of father if he wasn't ready. That these babies were hers, too. That's when things shifted. Dorian stopped sleeping in the same bed. He became distant and cold. He didn't speak to her unless she spoke first. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. And when she asked where he'd been, he answered with silence. Still, she stayed. Maybe it was the hormones. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was fear of being alone with twins on the way. By July, she was showing a soft, rounded belly that she began dressing with pride. She finally posted her first baby bump photo, standing in her kitchen in a flowy green dress. The caption read, "2 hearts beating inside me green heart #twinscoming 2024. The comments were full of congratulations and prayer hands. But one comment stood out, Dorian's. "This ain't the time for games, Amara." She deleted it minutes later. That same week, Amara visited her mother in Spanish Town. During that visit, she broke down. Her mother, Mrs. Yvonne Bledsoe, later said in an interview, she wasn't herself. She was scared but trying to be strong. She told me, "Mommy, I think he's trying to scare me into changing my mind." Mrs. Bledsoe urged her to come home. To leave him. To raise the baby surrounded by people who loved her. But Amara said she wanted to give Dorian one last chance. That maybe, if she sat him down and talked it through, he would come around. According to her cousin Talia, that conversation happened on the night of July 16th. Talia said Amara texted her that evening, "He's quiet. Too quiet. But I'm not leaving until he hears me out." It was the last message she ever sent. The next morning, Dorian reported Amara missing. He told police she went for a walk and never came back. That she sometimes took walks to clear her head. That maybe she was just upset and needed space. But he couldn't explain why her phone, purse, and keys were still in the apartment. He couldn't explain why her shoes were by the front door. And he couldn't explain the scratches on his arms. When officers from the Cedarvale Police Department arrived at the apartment on July 17th, Dorian Ellis stood at the door with his hands in his pockets, eyes red, but dry. He claimed Amara had been upset the night before, something about pressure from work, anxiety about the pregnancy. According to him, she left around 9 p.m. to get some air and didn't return. He said he waited, thinking she'd cool off and come back. She never did. The officer who took the report later noted that Dorian's account was unusually vague. He couldn't describe exactly what she was wearing, nor recall if she had taken her phone. When asked why he waited nearly 12 hours to report her missing, he said he assumed she had gone to stay with a relative. But Amara's family knew otherwise. When they were contacted, her mother, Yvonne, immediately rejected the idea that Amara had simply walked off. She wouldn't leave without telling someone, she insisted. Not with the babies. Not like that. By the afternoon of the 18th, a full missing persons case had been opened. Flyers went up across town. Friends and family began sharing her photo online, Amara in her green maternity dress, smiling gently with her hand over her stomach. But while the public searched, investigators were already suspicious. When they returned to the apartment for a formal sweep, something felt off. Nothing was broken. No signs of forced entry. But the bedroom smelled faintly of bleach. The sheets had been stripped from the mattress. The carpet near the foot of the bed had a damp patch, recently cleaned. The detective leading the search, Inspector Clive Morris, later stated in court records, "It wasn't what we found. It was what was missing." The bed was bare. Her pregnancy journal was gone. Even the baby items she had just bought, tiny socks, bibs, ultrasound photos, vanished. When asked, Dorian claimed she took the items with her. But no one believed that. Phone records revealed that Amara's phone had not left the apartment complex after 8:47 p.m. the night she vanished. More disturbing was the fact that Dorian's phone had also gone dark for nearly 4 hours that night. Investigators found this highly unusual, especially since the area had good coverage and Dorian had previously used his phone frequently, even late into the night. When CCTV footage from a local corner store was pulled, it showed Dorian at 11:52 p.m., purchasing a flashlight, gloves, and a large black garbage bag. The clerk remembered him well, not because he was a regular, but because he was sweating, jittery, and paid in cash. Meanwhile, the community was organizing search parties. Volunteers combed the nearby woods, backroads, and riverbanks. Prayer circles were held. Teachers from Amara's school brought food to her mother's house. The town hoped, clung, and prayed. On the fourth day, hope turned to horror. Two teenagers riding bikes near the edge of a neglected sugarcane field, roughly 4 miles from the apartment, noticed a smell. At first, they thought it was a dead animal. But as they got closer, one of them saw what looked like a foot. Police were called immediately. The sight was grim. A shallow grave, hastily dug, with a loose scattering of banana leaves covering the disturbed soil. Inside, they found the body of a young woman wrapped in a floral bedsheet. Her body was badly decomposed, but the soft swell of her belly was still visible beneath the fabric. It didn't take long to confirm, it was Amara. Forensic teams secured the scene. What they discovered next shook even the most seasoned officers. Inside the womb were 2 perfectly formed fetuses, estimated at 13 weeks. They had been unharmed physically. The cause of death for Amara was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, with evidence of asphyxiation. There were signs of a struggle, defensive wounds on her arms, bruising on her wrists, and skin beneath her fingernails. One detail stood out, a single silver earring clutched in her right hand. Dorian was arrested the next day. According to reports, he offered no resistance. He sat calmly in the back of the police cruiser, saying nothing. Not a word. During his interrogation, he denied everything. He said he had no idea how she ended up in the field. That he thought she had run away. That someone else must have hurt her. But when detectives presented the footage from the store, the phone data, and finally the forensic report that showed his DNA under her fingernails, his composure broke. He asked for a lawyer and said nothing more. The arrest sent shockwaves through Cedarvale. For many, the idea that someone so close, someone who once promised her forever, could do something so final, so cruel, was unbearable. At Amara's vigil, dozens gathered with candles, laying flowers and baby toys at the gate of her former apartment. A former student, no older than 6, left a note that read, "Miss B, I miss you. I hope your babies are with you." Autopsy records later confirmed what many feared, the twins had died with their mother. They had never stood a chance. The murder weapon, a ceramic figurine from the couple's nightstand, was later found wrapped in a towel and tossed into a roadside ditch. It had traces of Amara's blood and hair. More damning was a voicemail retrieved from Amara's phone backups. It was a draft she never sent. In it, she tearfully spoke. "He told me if I didn't end the pregnancy, he'd make sure I regretted it. I don't think he's bluffing anymore." The prosecution would later use that recording as part of their argument for premeditation. At a press conference held outside the courthouse, Inspector Morris addressed the public. This wasn't a sudden burst of anger. This was a man who didn't want responsibility. And when he couldn't control her choice, he erased her completely. The case quickly gained national attention, not just because of the brutality, but because of the deeper issue it raised. What happens when coercion turns to murder, when a man's desire for control collides with a woman's right to choose life? Dorian Ellis was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Amara, and 1 for each unborn child. It was a rare legal step, but under Jamaican criminal law, prosecutors argued that the intentional killing of a pregnant woman, knowing she was carrying viable fetuses, constituted multiple homicides. Public opinion was divided. Some believed Dorian should be charged with a single count. Others supported the triple charge wholeheartedly. But nearly everyone agreed, Amara deserved justice. Her funeral was held at Cedarvale Community Church. The caskets, one for her, two smaller ones for the twins, were carried in by teachers, cousins, and childhood friends. The service was standing room only. People who didn't even know her came, just to say goodbye. As her mother spoke through tears, she said she wanted to name them Isaiah and Eden. She was already singing to them. She had so much hope. And he took that from her, from all of us. Following his arrest, Dorian Ellis was formally charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Amara Bledsoe, and 2 additional counts for the deaths of her unborn twins, whom the prosecution identified in court filings as Baby A and Baby B. These charges marked a rare and chilling case in Jamaican legal history, where a man stood accused of eliminating an entire family in one act of violence. Prosecutors cited Section 6 of the Offenses Against the Person Act, which allows for multiple murder counts if the victim is pregnant and the unborn children are deemed viable. The evidence, they argued, made it clear, Dorian didn't just kill Amara, he knowingly and intentionally took the lives of 2 innocent unborn children as well. In court, Dorian stood motionless as the charges were read. He did not enter a plea at the preliminary hearing. His attorney requested a mental health evaluation, hinting at a potential defense rooted in emotional instability. But the prosecution quickly objected, arguing that the killing was planned, deliberate, and carried out with chilling clarity. Behind the scenes, investigators were still combing through evidence. A forensic analysis of Dorian's laptop revealed troubling internet searches made in the days leading up to the murder. How deep to bury a body? Can bleach erase DNA traces? How long before someone is declared missing? In addition, texts retrieved from Amara's cloud backup painted a haunting picture of fear. In one message to her cousin Talia, just days before she disappeared, Amara wrote, "He's not just mad I kept the babies. He acts like they ruined everything. I sleep with the door locked now." These texts, alongside location data, store footage, and autopsy reports, were enough for the court to deny bail. The judge ruled that Dorian posed a danger to the public and could potentially flee if released. As the legal battle unfolded, the community of Cedarvale watched closely. The triple murder charge sent ripples far beyond their quiet parish. News outlets across the island and the diaspora began covering the case. Commentators debated the legal implications. Could unborn children be counted as murder victims in a court of law? Could Dorian's charges set a new precedent? The court's position was firm, yes. The twins, estimated to be over 13 weeks gestation, were considered viable enough under Jamaican precedent to warrant charges. And prosecutors leaned heavily on Amara's voice, both literally and figuratively, to reinforce their case. A chilling voicemail, saved but never sent, was discovered in her phone's draft folder. In it, Amara is crying, her voice shaking. "If anything happens to me, I want people to know, I didn't agree to anything. I wanted my babies. I told him I wasn't going to change my mind. I don't feel safe anymore." When the recording was played during an evidentiary hearing, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. One of the detectives on the case, Inspector Clive Morris, later stated, "This was not a crime of passion. This was a calculated elimination. He didn't just want her gone, he wanted to erase the decision she made. The life she chose." Outside the courtroom, the tragedy left a trail of broken hearts and unanswered questions. At Amara's funeral, held in late August, 3 caskets were lowered into the earth, 1 large, and 2 small. Her mother wept openly as she placed twin plush toys into each of the children's coffins. The church, filled with teachers, neighbors, and former students, was blanketed in white flowers. A soft rain fell as the service ended. Later that evening, Mrs. Yvonne Bledsoe addressed a small crowd gathered at a vigil near the old sugar mill where Amara's body had been found. Holding a candle in one hand and a photo of her daughter in the other, she said, They weren't just unborn. They had names, Isaiah and Eden. She had picked them already. He knew that. He knew everything. And he chose to take it all. The triple murder charges brought fierce public attention, but also harsh reflection. In interviews and town hall meetings, local women shared their own stories of coercion, partners who pressured them into procedures, or punished them for keeping pregnancies. In Amara's name, a new support network was launched, Amara's Voice, aimed at protecting pregnant women from emotional and psychological abuse. But back in the courtroom, Dorian's defense began shifting strategy. They floated the idea of a plea deal, admitting guilt in exchange for a reduced sentence. According to leaked court documents, the offer was to plead to 1 count of second-degree murder, with the twin charges dropped. Prosecutors declined. So did Amara's family. "We will not let him erase them in death like he tried to erase them in life," her brother said. Public support remained strong for the prosecution. Online petitions gained traction, demanding that all 3 charges stand. News commentators argued that this was about more than one act of violence, it was about the right to choose life without fear of punishment. Dorian Ellis now faces 3 life sentences if convicted on all counts. The trial is scheduled for February 17, 2024, and is expected to last at least 3 weeks. Witnesses will include friends, co-workers, digital forensic experts, and Amara's own family. The evidence is stacked. The motive is clear. But whether a jury will convict on all 3 charges remains to be seen.